Okay, so in this video, let's take a look at what we can do with some of the things inside of jQuery. So here I've got a jQuery example site folder, and inside of it, it just has a simple index HTML file. If we go ahead and open this up, we'll see here, let me pull this off in its own tab so it's all kind of by itself. We can see here that I have a web page that I've created, and basically what we have here, these are just in here, these boxes where it says fade out, slide up, hide. These are just simple divs. So I've just made divs, I've given them some dimension. I can't remember what size, I think they're about like 200 by 200. Put some text in the middle of it. And then basically I've made some buttons down here. So these are anchors. And I've put some hover states on them. And what we're doing here is we're using jQuery. So we're using jQuery to apply effects to these divs. So inside of jQuery there's an effect called fade out. And so if you notice up here on the title, I said effects resulting in a display of none. So hopefully you remember from graphic web design when we're talking about there is a display property inside CSS. Well, when you set display to none, what that does is it removes it completely off the screen. To show you that, for example, I'm going to go ahead and just right click and hit inspect element. Typically you have an inspector that's built into modern browsers nowadays. And when you hit inspect, you'll see it'll bring this up where you can kind of look through the HTML. Now I'm in Firefox, you might be in Chrome or Safari or Opera. It might look slightly different than what mine looks like. But I can go in here and start looking at the code inside of each one of these. So it'll show me all the HTML code. So you can notice that I have a bunch of divs called with a class jQuery on it. Well, that's where all these guys are located. And on each side of it, inside of each one of these, now I have another div inside of each one. And you can see I've got inside here. And really it's actually an H3, not a div. But within that div there is an H3. So this is the guy that's right here. So if I were to go in here, now that I have this selected, it shows me over here the rules. Remember CSS, when you have the name of the selector and then the open and close curly braces, this whole entire thing is called a rule. So this is the rule that I have on there. So with this inspector I can add a new line. I can go ahead and say display, and I can set it to none. And you can see then it turns that off. Now really, if you notice, that's just the H3, so that was just the text inside of it. So really I do have it on this ID. So let me come back over to the ID that has fade out. And here it is right here. So here, this is for all of them though. So this will be, if I do display here and say none, you see it gets rid of all of them. So that's what it means by resulting in a display of none. It means it gets rid of it after it does the effect. So I'm going to come on back out here and reload the page, so now they're all back. So for example, when I click on this first one, there's a command called fade out, or there's an effect called fade out that's built into the jQuery library. So this is code. When I click on this button, it fades it out and it results in a display of none. So since its display is none, that means it doesn't take up any dimension on the page, so the other two slide over to try to fill up the space where it was at. So then the slide up, you'll see it slides up, and then it results in a display of none. Hide is actually going to make the height go up, the width go over, and it's going to fade out at the same time to the top left corner. Unfortunately, you cannot change the corner where it goes to, so it always goes to the top left like that. And now that all three are gone, they all have a display of none, so there's nothing to stop the bottom here where I had basically these buttons to going up and filling up the spot where it took up, because they're completely gone. To make them come back, I just have to hit refresh and they come back. So fade out affects the opacity, fades it out. Slide up affects the height, goes up. And then hide affects the height, the width, and the opacity, all three. Then we have the opposites. So if you have a fade out, a slide up, and a hide, you have a fade in, a slide down, and a show. So these result in a display of block, so it will show them. That's what a div is default, is a display of block. Block would be like the box model that you should have learned last month. The box model would be things, like the inner width and height, the padding, the border, and then the margin. So if I fade this in, click it, you can see that it fades in. If you slide it down, click it, you can see it slides down. Click and show, and there's show. And so this is now taking up dimension, so it's creating dimension within this div. Alright. Then there's toggles. So these toggle between the effects, because once we fade in, if I click this again, you can see it doesn't do anything else. And if I fade out, slide up and hide, it doesn't do anything else because those have already happened. So there's a way to toggle them. So if I do a fade toggle, it just does the opposite of whatever it is. So if its display is already blocked and you can see it, it then knows, okay, I need to do a fade out. So it'll do a fade out. Now, if its display now is none, it knows, okay, so then I need to do a fade in. So you click it again, it does a fade in. Slide toggle, so you can just go between it. And the hide. And I'm doing this to divs. You can do this to any element. So it can affect divs, anchors, H1 through 6s, span tags, header tags, footer tags, main tags, any tag that you can think of. We can also affect CSS. So you can modify, jQuery can modify CSS. So if we look in here, I've got a style right here. If I click on this, it's going to change the background of that div right there. Then right here, I'm going to change the border of this guy. So it changes the border to a white dotted line. And this I can do multiple. So these were just doing one example. So you see this one is changing the color of the background color there to orange. It made the border white. It added a drop shadow to it as well. So you can do multiple CSS files at the same time. You can add classes to an item. So if you wanted to add, like if you wrote a specific class inside your CSS and you wanted to add that to an element, you can do that inside of jQuery. Now if you want to remove that class, there is a remove class. So there you can see it removes it. Once it's removed, it's kind of like the top up there. You can only add it and then you can only remove it with these buttons. So click it again, it doesn't do anything, but there's also a toggle. So you can toggle the class on and off. You can also see it changes the width of the text as well. And then you can do custom animations if you would like also with jQuery. So jQuery supports animation. So with code, I can animate this div right here. So basically, I'm just going to animate it going over here to the side, coming back. I'll also animate the width and height. So you can see it is going up and down. And again, I don't have a set height for this guy right here. So as this goes across, you can see that the button kind of follows it. So it is changing the dimension where it's going to follow this as well. And so that's a little preview of what you can do with jQuery.